we know what we're talking about?
Season 3.
Hi, I'm John Stevens.
This is Matt Russell.
This
And this is Pod Have Mercy.
Everybody
Wait.
take a sip and tell me what you think.
Is this lampshade, John?
The nose. Do you get the nose? It's delicious.
That's lampshade.
So, yeah, we love Lampshade Coffee. And we get sent Lampshade Coffee by Lampshade, and Meg Bulwer sends us
We just say thank
Lampshade
you.
Coffee. And
Fantastic.
so thank you, Lampshade Coffee.
And I think we're going to pass one of these
And guess
on to our
what?
guests.
We're going to give one to our special guest
Oh.
today. If he performs well.
We will. We always wait to the end.
We'll wait to the end, and then we'll see. Maybe
dangling out there.
a few days to see if it trends.
Fair.
Yeah.
What percentage of folks get the coffee versus don't?
We can't tell you that.
It's a very low percentage.
It's a low
figured.
percentage.
Yeah, it's about to get lower.
Yeah.
So,
if you post on your social media and it trends well there, and you link back to us, there's actually an algorithm we use.
that's good to know because you can't post things apparently. So so I got you covered.
After this episode,
I'm
Matthew
learning how to post.
Russell gets a social media tutoring
tutorial.
session.
Yes, our geriatric class.
Back in my day,
room 201. Yeah.
Did you bring the dial up, Jeff?
there's nothing wrong with AOL, folks. Nothing wrong. No
You got
shame.
mail. Well, Michael, thanks for being with us. Matthew,
Yes, John.
I'm going into all these formal names.
Yes, Jonathan.
You know Michael way better than I do. Why don't you introduce Michael?
Yeah, well, I mean, Michael is probably one of the folks in ministry that I admire kind of the most of what he's doing. I've known him for a few years. When we moved back from England to the States, somebody introduced me to Michael and said, you guys need to know each other. And so we met at a coffee shop and just became really fast friends and had a great conversation. Michael's the lead pastor in Galveston at Galveston.
Co-pastor.
Lead co-pastor.
The lead co-pastor.
The lead is
the first among
co-pastor.
equals. Yeah.
He's the Pope. He's co-pastoring a church in Galveston church plant, and it's just, I think I'll just say this out loud. I think you're one of the brightest thinkers we have that I'm around, and you're taking risks in terms of what the church could and probably needs to look like in the future, and are kind of creating some paths for us in that way. So,
Do I pay you now or later? How does that work?
So just don't mess this up.
Okay, good.
You can give me some of the
Yeah, some coffee. Yes, I'll share with you.
But it's a delight to have you here, Michael.
Thank you.
And partly, I think what John and I want to do is just hear about the ministry that you're involved in Galveston and what's happening there, and then just kind of pick your brains about kind of trends of the church and those kinds of things that we can be learning about.
Yeah, tell us the story. I mean, Galveston, this was a church that either you started or renovated or reinvigorated or something.
It's a little bit of all the above. So Central's a community that's been around since 1885. So like pre-1900 storm in Galveston. It was a community that was started by 3 adults and 13 kids in Miss Eliza Perkins' front yard off Avenue I. And that little mission Sunday school in Galveston grew. Wow. And they bought property kind of where we exist now. And by the mid 1950s or 60s, this was a community that had 1,000 people on the membership books. I mean, it was kind of the who's who in Galveston. The parsonage, the old parsonage, is down the street, and it's this super bougie, like, big house, mother-in-law suite in the back, pool. Mariah still doesn't know that that's the parsonage because they sold it right before we got there. So that's our little secret. Hopefully she doesn't watch this. But so we live in a very nice house, but not that.
but not a bougie
Yeah,
house.
not a bougie house. And then, things changed. Like neighborhoods started changing and this congregation started aging. And when I got there in 2014, there were 4 people left in this big complex that had 1,000 a couple of decades before. And so we kind of started... Central's charter has existed the whole time, so it's always been Central United Methodist Church. And so we tried to kind of continue on with that, but recognized we were kind of spinning our wheels because this community now didn't reflect the community outside the walls. It had become literally like an island on an island and had bad press in the neighborhood. It was known as kind of the old white racist church. The 4 people that were there, I think, were the original members from 1885.
That marketing actually works well in some places.
It does, yeah, it does. Galveston's not one of them, but yes, booming. So good.
We can put some lipstick on that. And
Yeah,
get you some
yeah.
members.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Yes, that's who I'm looking for.
That's funny.
So we shut it down for about 4 months. Made a lot of outside kind of cosmetic changes. Literally put boards up on the doors to make it look like it was a full change of management, and then reopened with kind of a vision towards the folks that church had stopped working for.
Because the footprint in the building you have is like massive, but it's also quite, at least at the beginning, was quite dilapidated.
And still is,
Okay.
actually. So yeah. I'll put my PayPal Venmo link at the end. Yeah. It's like shabby chic or something like that. Emphasis on the shabby. So yeah, it's a mess. The newest renovation was from 1957. So hopefully we're going to bring that up soon. But yeah, kind of this eye towards folks that, like none of my friends were going to church anymore. And so as we had an opportunity to kind of curate something that might be interesting to folks that have stopped going to church. And then we do a lot of work with Galveston's unsheltered population. And it's an amazing place.
Talk to me about so you have church on Sundays. I know some people that have gone down there on the weekends. I think Jim has come when he's down there.
Yes.
Jackson really admires you and likes you. But the only thing I remember is like you turn the sanctuary in like a living room.
Yeah.
Like couches and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
So it was awesome.
And then like you don't wear shoes. That was the only thing I heard.
That's it. That's all that there is to
and
Central.
that
No doubt.
that
just
made
that.
the people then came.
That's it. We got to see Michael's
That's it.
feet. Like that's what the draw is. So it's a very weird crowd there.
No, but anyway, you started this thing. Talk about like when you got there in 2014. I mean, how did that grow? How did that expand? And then I really want to hear about, I say homeless, but unsheltered population, especially over the last year and a half with COVID.
Absolutely.
How's that ministry been as a challenge?
Yeah. So kind of started rethinking about space. I was really big on like our architecture has to reflect the values that we want the community to feel when they walk in. And so I've got friends that would never go sit on a pew in a church, but they'll sit on my couch in my living room. And so I literally put up a Facebook post and said, hey, if you're getting rid of a couch, let me know. And all these people did. And so we got a U-Haul and like drove around League City and Galveston and Texas City and just picked up all these couches. It was amazing.
De-lice them.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's a regular thing. And just put them in the sanctuary to try to have this feel when you walk in that it feels like home. And that's often what people will say when they walk in. Some of our unsheltered friends developed this little tagline for us that said, this is our home away from homelessness. And so whether that's like physical homelessness or spiritual homelessness, it's kind of become home for a lot of people.
Is there a run like early when the doors open? Is there like a run on the couches?
Yeah.
Is there a favorite couch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like preferred seating.
The pull-out couches, there's, any of those things happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. People are laid out everywhere. It's great. You got to make sure the sermon is real strong because like when you're preaching to somebody laid back, coffee's got to be good. So, but it's a really fun space. Yeah. So 2018, we were having a picnic at Kempner Park, which is a couple blocks from the church. And Central's got good church folk, and it's a community place where a lot of our unsheltered friends, and I use that word, homeless is fine, but they would tell you they have a home, right? They may not have a house, but they have a home. And so we talk about unsheltered just for that language. But the park was a place where a lot of these people would hang out, and we had a big barbecue. And so being good church people, they did what you're supposed to do and invited folks over to come eat with us, and they did. And then being really good church people, they said, you guys should come to church on Sunday. And would you believe that these homeless people had the audacity
to
show up on Sunday morning? And my people were just not ready for that, right? And so we, again, with this hospitality thing, we had snacks that we would put out for folks. And these homeless people were like hungry. And they like ate the food and didn't ask if it was okay if they ate the food. Yeah. And then we started developing relationships. And so from this very like organic space of meeting people in a safe place and learning about needs and knowing names and stories, we started developing some programs that came out of that. And so that little Kempner Park picnic now turned into every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, we do showers, we do laundry, we do a hot meal that's provided for folks. We've got a bicycle repair shop, because if you're unsheltered, your primary transportation around the island is on a bicycle, and a flat can make the difference between getting a job or not. We do a clinic. We've partnered with UTMB, so our whole second floor has med students and nursing students and social workers and a dentist that come in and help people meet those kind of needs. Yeah.
The last time I was there, you walked me through, this was right before the pandemic, you walked me through a whole kind of suite of offices that have, it's basically a laundromat.
Yeah.
Like, what's that about?
Yeah. So quickly, Beth, who's my admin person, her job description has that other duties as assigned, and that's like 95% of her job. So she was, again, meeting friends. They really became friends, and laundry was a big issue. And so she was taking people's clothes home. And we said, well, why don't we put in a couple washers and dryers up here? So we've got 3 washers and dryers that folks can do a load of laundry per week. And it's a real dignifying thing. We don't do laundry for them. You get to come in and do it just like it was your washer and dryer. And because clothes are very intimate and personal. And a chance for people to feel like clean and human. And, the rest of your world is folks looking down on you and not wanting to touch you. And this is a space where you get to kind of reclaim that peace. That gets lost the rest of the week. So it's a full scale laundromat. I remember that class we took in seminary about laundry.
Laundry in the church.
Yeah, exactly.
And bike repair was my favorite one.
Yeah. And I love, one of our values is mutuality. And so we take an asset-based approach to our service stuff, that instead of starting with what's wrong with you, it's what's right with you, and how can we leverage those gifts for the community, for the kingdom of God. So there's a guy who runs our bike shop. When he was like 4 or 5, got really sick, had a fever that lasted for weeks. And so as a result of that, has some intellectual disabilities, can't read, can't write. But this dude can fix bikes like nobody's business. And I'm like so mechanically challenged. It's not even funny. And so he just started working on stuff, and we partnered then with a bike shop in Seabrook that gives us parts at cost or often free. And so this guy runs this bike shop for us and partners with housed community members and unhoused community members. And so we're always, if you were to walk into Central, I think you would have a hard time, or I hope you would have a hard time picking out who's homeless and who's not, because everybody's serving with each other. Everybody has gifts to bring. And I think the bike shop is a neat representation of that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. One of the things I love about your community is that it's that you don't know who is who, right? Part of that is just the uniform on the island is a lot more relaxed, right?
Yes,
so
this is my Sunday best.
So Sunday you show up in a t-shirt.
I put shoes on for you guys. So you're welcome. So,
but there are also, my hunch is that there's also tension between folks that maybe feel like that this is my community, and then you have folks that are unsheltered coming in. And although on a continuum of care, we all are struggling with kind of mental health issues, we know that unsheltered brothers and sisters often have lack of resources to engage with kind of mental health on a formal level. So what has that been like to kind of bring these kind of two communities, so to speak, together and attempt to be seen as this is our community, this is us? It's really beautiful most of the time, and it's really hard a lot of the time. Our neighbors are not always huge fans of us because it gets a little rowdy sometimes. So there's a lady from down the street who knocked on the door one time and said, this used to be a really nice church. Y'all would just do services on Sunday and that was it. When you had those boards up?
Yeah, exactly. We really liked that. And so, again, my admin, Beth, kind of quit back. She was like, well, some of us feel like it's a church finally, kind of, was the answer. And so there's those kind of tensions between people that don't understand and haven't engaged in a relationship, and the NIMBY phenomenon is real. I love what you're doing, just please don't do it in my backyard kind of thing.
Wait, would you call it NIMBY?
NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Oh.
Yeah.
So not cool.
Oh, I know. It's so
It's
hip.
a big thing.
Yeah. So people love coming in and seeing what's happening, but if you were to ask them to recreate what's happening here in their church, they'd be very uncomfortable with a lot of it until it happens, because I think we're wired towards kinship and belonging, right? I mean, Mother Teresa said, the thing that's wrong with the world is that we've forgotten that we belong to each other. And so the central experiment is really trying to remind people of that. You talk all the time about improbable friendships.
Yeah.
And that's what this is creating. So there's countless stories. Kempner Park, the same park where the picnic happened, is close to a couple that joined Central a couple years ago. They moved from Highland Park United Methodist, so very similar to Central in terms of
it's just
population.
like the neighborhood is the same.
Yeah. So they were real comfortable when they moved in, and it was great.
One of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Texas.
Yeah.
Yes.
For people who may not know.
But delightful people, and so they started attending. They were walking through Kempner Park, and the the man noticed all these people that were kind of sleeping, hanging out there, and made a mental note to say, I need to call the cops when I get home, because surely these people are up to no good. And as they're getting ready to exit the park, they hear a hey, and this guy calls out their name, and it's Lucius, one of our guys who's sitting at a picnic table, and says, I think I saw you guys at church. And they say, oh yeah. And so invites him to sit down at the picnic table, and they have a 2-hour conversation that night. And this guy goes home and doesn't call the cops, right? So it's that kind of like radical change that happens. Brene Brown says people are hard to hate.
Close up.
That's it. So creating spaces. I had an Old Testament professor that said the chief virtue of Christianity is not love, well, like we always think it is. He said it's actually curiosity, because curiosity is that force that propels me towards my neighbor, right? Instead of kind of keeping a distance. And if you do some like word study, like curiosity, the root word there is cura from the Latin, which is the same word that we get cure from. So there's something about me being curious about you, John, that moves me towards you. And in that process, our mutual healing happens. God seems to show up in that space. And I think especially across the demographic divide, where both sides have lost their humanity in some ways, this is an opportunity for people to reclaim that. And the divine seems to show up every single time. So
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's like we talked about this. It was in last week. It was the spiritual practice of paying attention,
Yeah.
and attending other people.
Yes.
Finding reverence in the moment.
Yes.
And that we think if we can pay attention to other people and connect to them, it's actually healing for us.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems we've faced over the past 18 months, why you see such toxicity and divisiveness about everything. Is people have been disconnected.
Yeah.
And it's easier to not like someone when you're not connected to them.
That's right.
We're only connected through social media, which is not real connection.
No, it's an
No.
artificial, I mean, it's literally filters, right? If you're on Instagram. And so you get to curate who you want to be. And it's an echo chamber.
Well, it's
often.
filtered, and it's also algorithmic in the sense that it's only going to populate your feed with the things that you already agree with.
That's right.
So there's no diversity in.
You're saying that's not healthy, John? Is that what?
I don't think that.
Okay.
Hasn't proved that. One of the phrases you used last week in the sermon was this phrase, to turn aside, rooted in Moses' own story.
Well, that was actually the Genesis. Wasn't my word.
But but you highlighted that.
Same thing, right?
And
So,
that phrase has been undoing me this week in the fact that when we're in tension, when we are constricted, we can't turn aside. And that the spiritual practice of turning aside is being curious as to what the Spirit might be doing in really places we don't expect the Spirit to be doing.
Well, and Barbara Brown Taylor says that he saw the bush, but then the scripture says he turned aside. He said, I must turn aside and look at this.
Look at this. What
So he already noticed it, but he said, I must turn aside and look at this. And up until that point, it was an angel of the Lord that was in the bush. But when the Lord saw that Moses turned aside, God then spoke. So it was almost like God wasn't in the bush until he turned aside to pay attention to it. And when he did that, God noticed that he turned aside, and God said, okay, now I'll speak to you.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how many burning bushes you walk by every day with people.
Oh, exactly
And
right.
you don't turn aside to revere or pay attention to them. And it's like, you think there's nothing there. Well, there's not anything there until you do.
That's exactly
God
right.
shows up in that moment.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think finding those burning bushes in unexpected places, but also unexpected faces, right? And that's what Central's trying to do, is put people together that have no business being together, and say, maybe this is actually the world turned right side up, is us interacting with each other in this way. So, and I don't. Jesus talked all the time about the poor, right? I mean, it's so putting yourself here, like, I want to be where Jesus is, right? Which means interacting with people that have had very different lived experiences than I've had.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me in church life is that some of the people who have the least willingness or the least willingness to even support ministry to population like that are also tend to be people who ideologically don't support welfare or some type of governmental support for that crowd. Which I'd be like, okay, I'd be great, because they say, well, the church used to do that. Well, yeah, but the church doesn't do it anymore.
That's exactly
church
right.
doesn't want to do it.
That's exactly right.
If you hang the shingle out and say, hey, come on, we're going to go do what you're doing, a lot of people would say, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, until they get a taste of it, and then I think it's incredibly compelling.
Yes.
So I don't want to sell people too short. I do think it's, I don't know, whenever God shows up in these places, like you want to be there.
Yeah.
And so that initial, again, it's that curiosity piece to drive people there. But the folks that have stuck around at Central wouldn't have been the ones that I would have guessed, right? These are some Highland Park folks that like you would just on the outside assume like you don't have the capacity to do this work or to be here. And I've been proven wrong time and time again.
Everybody has the capacity.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's exactly right.
Desire. Was it always like there's the need, there's the giftedness, and there's the passion? The three legs of the stool. To me, it's always like discerning kind of where you fit. And you've got people that their needs there all around you, right? Every day.
Right.
They've got the giftedness, but they have passion for it, which is interesting.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
But your neighbor down the road, maybe.
We're still working on her. Yeah.
But never give up.
Never give up. Yeah. You never know. So we keep inviting her over and we do a lot of stuff over shared meals because there's something about eating together that I think is important. So hopefully she'll come to one of these dinners sometime.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It's good.
One of the things I've often said to you that I feel like that your community is like this redemptive freak show.
Yeah.
And that
it's the who's who of everybody who's a nobody, you know?
Yeah. And some that are. I mean, there's some folks that have property and come to the island on the weekends and that's, and they're plugged in there or they're seasonal. They come down there when the weather's good and they've got a couple houses and, the island's one of those places. And to watch this community that should not work, folks that should not be together that are together.
Yeah.
There's something that smells sometimes like feet, but it also it also smells like Jesus in that place. And I think, y'all have moved beyond just a model of ministry we're going to serve and to a model of ministry that is really attempting in your local space to do kinship. Like this is us.
Yes.
Right? We are together in this.
Yes.
Right? And there's something about that I think that reflects on the church writ large. I think that we have a lot to learn.
Yeah, and I think it's Greg Boyle talks a lot about how it's not about taking the right stance on issues, but it's about standing in the right places and with the people. And so, I think that again, Redemptive Freak Show happens from people showing up, being willing to be vulnerable, to expose parts of themselves that are messy and to be met with the messiness of others and then trust, that Jesus is in this redemption kind of business and something can be reclaimed and restored. And you get these little glimpses of the kingdom, right? God's been really gracious to us in that way.
This is the thing that's resonated this week and before. It's like wisdom is not knowing the right thing to do. It's practicing the right thing to do, whether you succeed or you fail.
Yeah.
But then talking about this week in incarnation, it's, in John 13, when Jesus is now getting ready to go and he's before all of them, and instead of teaching them something to know, he shows them something to do. So it's around a table, shared meal. You talked about that, and he washes their feet.
Yes,
and so it's like eating, smelling, tasting, touching. It's things. It's like he leaves them things to do, and he says, "Do this in remembrance of me. Do this." As I've done this to you, you do this to other people.
Yeah.
Not believe this.
No.
And that's what I think is very interesting to me in our culture, especially with kind of Christianity and culture and politics and all this. It's like orthodoxy now has become an idol.
Yes.
Yes. It's an idol.
Go. Yes. Go.
Yeah.
I did go. That was it.
Okay. Yes.
Now orthodoxy has become an idol. So it's like this litany of things you have to believe. So, and yet it's like I tell people sometimes, and I say it jokingly, but I think some people get offended and some people don't like it. But I said some of y'all go to too many Bible studies. I mean, you just you go to too many Bible studies. And I think some people it hurts their feelings because like, well, that's what you're supposed to do, study the Bible.
Right.
But it's like, what does it lead you to do?
Right.
What does it do in your heart and your life? Because I know people who go to 6 Bible studies a week and they don't behave very Christian around other people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really understand how the belief feeds over into actually, practice in what you do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And the Protestant kind of move has been like the 3 B's, right? So the first thing you do is you believe the right things, and then you behave like we behave, and then you can belong to the community. And so at least what we're trying to think about is what does it mean to flip those on its head and say, no, just come belong. Like this is the most important thing first, is come be a part of this, come be shaped by these people around you, come be baptized. And when you are, you're included in this community. And then the community's different.
Right.
So we got to rethink ourselves now with you a part of it. And that's like where, orthopraxy over orthodoxy. I think
Absolutely,
all
every
day.
day and all day.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's get
and-
tattoos. It'd be long.
That's you and I've talked about this before, but that Michael Polanyi who says that our believing at its source is conditioned upon our belonging, right? And so it is relationship. Always relationship
Always.
that creates not just the conditions, but the very membrane, the processes, the structures for our believing.
That's right.
Right? And so when we ask people and we put the kind of red tape in front of people and say, tell me what you believe, and then I'll tell you if you belong, that's absolutely upside down
right.
than what we see in the gospel of Jesus.
That's right.
Particularly with the disciples. I mean, Jesus says, come and see.
Yes.
It's not until 3 years into his earthly ministry that he drops the Bill Bright question, of who do you say that I am, right? So it's you belong,
That's
belong,
right.
belong. And out of that belonging, and like John's saying, and the doing of those practices, that's the membrane that creates the what we believe.
Yeah,
Yes.
remember we talked about the first words of Jesus in the Gospel of John is a question. What are you looking for?
What are you looking for?
So good.
That is
And
right.
then-
It's so good.
and then his response after they respond to him, he goes, "Come and see."
Yes.
It's a
It's
sight.
love
Like
it.
a
Yeah.
big-
invitational.
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah.
What
it's
are you
beautiful.
looking for?
What are you looking for?
I mean, I don't know. I think they were just looking for belonging. They were looking
Yeah.
for meaning.
Yeah.
Something deeper than what they had.
Absolutely.
Yes. But not 10 points in a, like here,
No,
believe these
I
things.
think the same thing. I think
Yeah,
you
that's
could
right.
figure out a way, and really thought about it. But I mean, like even when you talk about the church nowadays, and I love the book of Corinthians because the church was very divided.
Yeah.
They're all over the map. There was cultural differences, racial differences, and all that.
like
But they were already a community. Paul's writing to them. They're already a community. But man, they're like really messed up.
Yeah.
And he's writing to a group that belongs together. And the first thing he does is it's not deeply theological, like the first 3 chapters of Ephesians or something. It's practical. All right, so they get upset when you eat the meat sacrificed to the idol, so don't do that. And I know you can do it. I know it's free for you.
Right.
Your freedom and your liberty,
Right.
you
Yeah.
feel like you're losing, but don't do it because out of love for them, it causes them to stumble, so don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's all practice.
That's right.
And then it kind of ends up in like 1 Corinthians 13,
Yeah.
then it becomes theological.
Right.
Faith, hope, and love,
Yeah.
the greatest of these is love.
Right.
So I even think it's like constructed in the scripture. And Ephesians does it, the first 3 chapters it's like, all right, here's the theology, here's the orthodoxy. That's the calling. But only matters if you practice the
Yeah.
last 3 chapters.
that's
It's like how you walk. Do you walk in a manner worthy? So is your walk of equal weight to the calling?
Yeah.
And if your
It's
walk's
beautiful.
not at equal weight, then
What are you doing?
Is
Yeah.
that because though at the outside, like Paul has this radical view that this new community, these new sets of relationships that are happening are actually where the very presence of Jesus is. And so it's this like put on kindness, not so you're a kind person, so that you are a part of a fabric that's building a new way of seeing the world in this new sets of relationships. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think often we end up putting these kind of Bible verses on a bumper sticker that says, be kind. Right?
Yeah.
That's great. But it's for the sake of this new fabric that you're part of being woven into that's creating a new way of relating to each other. And I think that's where often we have lost that vision.
I think you're exactly right.
Yeah. You were up for an award on the Galveston Island for being one of the Citizen of the Year award that had made the biggest impact in all of Galveston Island. Here's a
Really?
kid. Are you yet 30 years old?
I am. Yeah.
When did you turn 30?
2 years ago.
Okay, so 32 years old, and he was up against all these other folks that had been on the island for a gazillion years, and here is a pastor that has been put up for Citizen of the Year. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you pay people enough money, you can get any award you want. So, no, it was a great honor.
well, we
Yeah, let's
already
go for
know the
community.
ministry you're doing. You didn't
Yeah.
buy somebody off.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Just take an extra
You'd be
handful out of the
pastor of
offer.
Highland Park if you did that. That's where you buy the award.
right, that's
right. That's right.
But I just think it's amazing that your community, the community of Galveston, is recognizing a church that's trying to operate in a different algorithm and relationship that says, this is what we want to value in this place. And that here's a person that in some way is catching flack from all sides and persisting on in this new imagination.
Yeah.
And the whole community of Galveston came together and said, something's happening here in Central. And I just think, I think that's amazing, Michael.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, it's been really special and a neat galvanizing time where the work that started we talked before about the idea of fractals, right? With Project Curate. And so the idea that the change that you want to see wholesale, like you got to start small with. So we've been asking questions like, what does it look like to make Galveston or Central a just and equitable community? And folks now are starting to pay attention to that and saying, well, how does this translate to like our city, our county, these places? So it's been really beautiful to engage with folks outside of the church for work that's just like dripping with kingdom values and like the way that God, I think, wants the world to be. So it's been a really exciting time. So we're working on some exciting housing things with city officials and with UTMB and getting medical care to folks that don't have it otherwise, immigration stuff, some racial justice stuff. It's been amazing.
Wow. That's the way the church is supposed to be. I mean, you preach, and you're trying to get people to live the life they're called to live, and to like look and act like Jesus, and that's what's going to change the world.
Yes.
Not your political advocacy is not going to change the world. It's just really not. Your ideological purity is not going to change
your
the world.
Your Facebook post is not going to do it.
Yeah, it's not. And so when people feel like, well, how are we going to make a difference in the world? Well, just the way the church has always made a difference in the world.
Yeah.
You walk in the manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called.
That's right.
The walk,
That's
it's
right.
the do.
The do.
Yeah.
Faith is a verb.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and then it's contagious for folks, right, that have had bad experiences with the church or de-churched or whatever. So, for UTMB, the state-funded institution that says, we need to partner with this faith community. It wasn't me knocking on UTMB's door saying like, hey, I need to get you to help my folks. They said, we want to be a part of what you're doing because we feel like we're missing out if we're not here.
Right.
It's that kind of shift that I think it's contagious work. And I think we sell ourselves short sometimes about people want to be a part of this kind of stuff.
That's right.
What I love about your church and your story is it's not like you have a church and you did an unsheltered person ministry.
Yeah.
It's like the whole
It's who we
DNA
are.
and identity is just,
Yeah.
it just is what it is.
Yeah.
So it's hard to kind of label for people who come from more traditional sort of organization churches. It's
Yes.
like, oh, they have a homeless ministry.
Yes.
Isn't that sweet?
Yes. And a lot of folks, volunteers will come in and say, what can we do? What can we do? And it's like, you just got to come and be. Like, you just form relationships and just sit and talk with people. And that the work will emerge from that. Just like if Matt were to call me up and say, I have this need, like we've developed a friendship, a kinship that would make space for that. So yeah, it's a different way of thinking about stuff. And I think that's all about power and hierarchy there, right? Oftentimes in ministry, it's very clear like who's in charge, who the haves are, you're the have-nots, and I'm going to bless you with this. And then it creates the expectation of the model poor person, which says you have to be grateful all the time and you can never have a bad day and you have to accept exactly what I'm giving you.
And don't come back for seconds.
Exactly right. Yeah, we don't do that here. So it's moving into more relational focus that says we all have things to offer and learn from each other. And that's what church is, right? That's what happens here at Chapelwood. We're just trying to think about who else can we invite to the party.
Yeah.
Earlier I mentioned the last year and a half, COVID. I can't imagine if you're already in a desperate, difficult situation. I mean, how's it impacted your church and how's it impacted people who are unsheltered in Galveston?
Yeah, so for us, we stopped corporate worship in person March of 2020, and then we just went back to in-person in June. So we've only been back for about 3 months, I guess. But during that time, our social services kept running. That's when a lot of these partnerships were formed because we recognized this time more than ever, like hygiene is vital. People staying clean and being able to shower and get clean clothes. It was already hard for these folks to find a job. And so the economic turmoil of a lot of entry jobs were being shut down. And so that was really challenging for folks. But the resiliency that we saw from our community was really inspiring, the way that they continued to love each other. There's one lady that comes. She shared a prison cell with Andrea Yates, if you remember that story from Clear Lake. She, tragic story with her kids. And she's got these great stories of singing Father Abraham to Andrea Yates in her prison cell. And so I asked her one day, how do you, I don't think I would believe anything if I had the experiences that you sold into human trafficking, like at an early age, lived on the streets for decades. I don't think I'd have any faith if I had your story. And she says, well, Pastor, I got me some spiritual cojones, is what she says. And she says, you know what cojones means? I said, I do. Thanks. Thank you. I do. So, it was a chance, I think, over the last 18 months to really see the spiritual cojones of Central and these people that show up, and for the haves, again, to like divest themselves of some things and be in relationship with people. And then partnering with agencies. So we were able to put on, so backing up, when League City or UTMB started doing their vaccines, they were doing these mass vaccination sites up in League City. You get in your car, drive through, get stuck. We were trying to get a van together to get some of our folks to go up. And when we had signups, like 7% of the people that were there were willing to sign up and go get vaccinated in League City. When we called UTMB and the health district and said, we really need to have a vaccine site here at the church so people can get access, both our Spanish-speaking folks and our unsheltered folks, we had something like 87% of those same people sign up because they trusted this place and they trusted their pastor and they trusted the community. And so they didn't know who those folks were in Lake City, but they trusted the people here. And so, yeah, being able to partner with those kind of groups and agencies and get people access to things that they wouldn't have otherwise, it was really wonderful and really hard. Some of our numbers have gone through the roof over the last 18 months for who we're serving, and folks that are kind of on that fringe line of almost being homeless. That number's growing. Galveston's got a poverty rate of like 22%.
Really?
Yeah.
It's high.
It's huge.
It's really high. So like 1 in 5 adults is at the poverty line or below it. And then that doesn't count the folks that are just above it, right? And 1 in 4 kids grows up. And then you pull out racial demographics and the numbers just get crazy, crazy. So
I thought it was just all beach homes.
There's a lot of them, and that's become, gentrification is a problem down there too. So both homes on either side of me have turned into Airbnbs over the last couple months. And I think that's probably an effect of some of the COVID stuff too. But yeah, it's not 50,000 people live there, and 10,000 of those are at or below the poverty line, which is wild. So you kind of get this very romantic vision of, Destin. Our beaches are just like Destin too. Beautiful white beaches, right. Clear water. That's why I moved there. We call it G-Town Brown down there.
Yeah, it is.
But there's
muddy
real
water.
Like underneath that, there's real people that live in that community and that have been hit hard by the COVID pandemic. So we're resilient, emerging out of it, but it's been challenging for people that already don't have much to have even more taken away. And you were mentioning earlier, Matt, the mental health stuff. When you lose access and all healthcare goes virtual and you don't have a cell phone or you don't have a screen, like that becomes a huge problem. Yeah. Right. So I think what we all felt was more acutely felt by that population.
So 5 years from now, what's your deepest hope for Central?
I hope I'm still employed. That's a big one.
But
for the community, I think that we just continue to dig deeper into relationships, and that we'd be able to, I think there's lots of really beautiful anecdotal stories, but like having some of the metrics to show like real community change. That Galveston, like that moral heartbeat of Galveston, that Central has a role in affecting like real community change. And Galveston is a place that cares about its people, especially its poor people, in all the ways, spiritually, healthcare, economically, all these things. And that Central can have an important part of influencing that and being a part of that. And continuing to like reclaim the idea of sanctuary, right? It's a word we throw around all the time, but for many people, church is not a safe place. And so to keep doing that work for whatever population demographic you find yourself in, like being able to come and find respite and rest and the divine in our walls. I hope that that's what we can be.
It's fantastic.
What do you see? So you talk about the future of your church at Central, but when you think about American Christianity, not to get into a depressing subject.
Yeah, this is very sad, John. So.
No, but when you think about, the fastest growing demographic is unchurched or unaffiliated, unaffiliated, non-religious or a-religious, or find themselves as spiritual but not religious. They're not associated with any.
Right.
And actually, this recent studies came back. Although, the evangelical church wants to say how it's flawed, but you see mainline churches actually ticking up a little bit.
Yeah.
And evangelical churches kind of ticking down.
Yeah.
Which is surprising. because you always think they're the ones that grow. And that's the argument that even some real conservative churches will make. It's like, we're faithful, we're fundamental, we grow.
We're orthodox.
We put the fun in fundamental.
You've changed things, so you're gonna drown and die and keep declining, and the stats don't bear that out.
Abandon hope.
But I wonder, is there some way that the mainline church in what we've done is now appealing to a segment of the population and community that doesn't want to see church? Like we said, like not in my backyard kind of churches, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is American Christianity when you think about, I mean, if you were in charge, you're the Pope of American Christianity.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Wow. What an honor. Yeah.
Come on.
Welcome,
You have to
Papa.
buy some shoes, dude.
Welcome, Papa. Well, I mean, what would be the script or the suggestion or?
It's good. Yeah, it's a great question. So I think part of maybe that mainline, like, going up thing, I think it's what you spoke to earlier about the need for like ritual and practice. Like we can't do abstract all the time, and so there's something about liturgy and about ritual and making things that are out here tangible for people, right? We do Eucharist communion every week at Central because people need a physical reminder of these like spiritual realities, I think, lenses to see the world. And so I think there's something about that that's really appealing to folks. I think the willingness to like ask really good questions. When Jesus talked about having a childlike faith, like most of us go to this blind obedience kind of space. But if you've been around kids, like all they do is ask, why? And so opening up to doubt and faith as these divine dance partners that I think go hand in hand. I think that's important. I think especially the younger generation that's really critical of institutions is asking a lot of really good questions about leadership and money and transparency and, okay, what impact are you actually making besides paying like Michael's salary kind of thing? So having tangible results for that out there is, I think, important for the church going forward, and just being willing to get gritty and messy. We probably 20% of Central would fall in that like de-churched, unaffiliated category. Like they wouldn't claim a theistic like box to check or whatever, which is interesting, but they're still drawn to this community and they want to be a part of the things, and they don't know what to do during worship on Sunday mornings often. It's very just different time for them, but they want to be engaged in this way. And so I think opening up more opportunities for folks like that is going to be important. Again, belief is not the criteria for entry.
Say that.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. If belonging is the entrance, you belong.
That's it.
Right. Then you ask a question, all those questions later.
Yeah.
After there's a set of relationships.
Yeah.
Right. And so
So we're having an interesting, like we just had some folks join the church, and the UMC is these beautiful vows that you take. But there's a segment of my population that isn't ready to take those vows yet, but they want to root themselves in this community and they're interested in pursuing. So we're trying to think through like, what does something else look like where they can make this like covenantal commitment to this community, but that confessing Jesus Christ piece, like they're just not quite there yet because of trauma or experience. And it's fascinating.
For people who are not inside denominational Methodists, we don't have constituent vows.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
You're just on the constituent roll.
Right.
But there's I like that. I mean, because, man, if you think about those vows, do you reject the evil forces and wickedness in the world, and do you repent of your sin, and did you accept the freedom that God gives you to oppress, to resist oppression in or whatever forms they find themselves? And we can get to that believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
But the first two, man,
it's powerful.
You've got to swim through that.
Yes. Yes. It's a huge commitment you're making.
And those almost seem like, in a sense, like I know we do baptism again differently than in Methodism, but it almost seems like the vows for membership are really the vows about baptism, really about discipleship. Now that you've gotten to know us, now that you belong, now that you spent time here, now that you've asked all your questions about Jesus, will you take these things on? Right. And I think that's the flop and the flip that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And
I think baptism is interesting too with like the church's commitment. I've been wrestling with this lately, is often like with baptism, there's a discipleship process that goes on ahead of time and we're asking people to ascend to these certain like beliefs, and then you get to come be a part of our club. But if baptism is really this act of claiming and now you're a part of us, we have to rethink about who we are now that you're a part of this, right? And so it changes even the church's identity, how we think about ourselves, how we move. So we can't just do the same thing after we welcome people in, right? Because we're different now, fundamentally different.
Is that because the people that you have welcomed in now have a claim on the identity of what you've just welcomed in?
We belong to each other.
Yeah. So it's not, we want your conformity to come in here and this is how we do it. It's now that that you belong to us, we have to change as well who we are.
Boom.
Because now you have a weight to bear in this place, and your voice matters.
So there's a place, when we do the baptism, we have those vows we just talked about, and then there's a place for the congregational response.
Yeah.
With God's help, we will
Yeah.
so order, la da da da.
Yeah.
And there's one line that goes, "We will pray for them. We will pray for him. We'll pray for her.
Yeah.
That God may blah 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 blah." And I remember years ago, a lady came out of church service in my church, and she said, "I don't say that." So what are you talking about? She goes, "The stuff that we say after the baptism, I don't do that." And a lot of these people shouldn't say that. It's like, what are you
'Cause they're not
talking
doing
about?
it.
She goes, "I'm not going to pray for them. I don't even know them." And she said, and a lot of these people are saying that, and they're not going to pray for them. Yeah. And I maybe thought, I was like, she's probably got some kind of a point, although she was being a little turd about it.
Yeah, right.
I was like,
Which is an actual congregational category.
Yes.
it's a spiritual category.
Exactly right.
The gift of turdiness.
Turtedness.
We got a couple of those. Yeah.
But I mean, it made me think. I was like, yeah, there are people that say it and don't mean it. But but symbolically, liturgically, that's the place where the church speaks.
That's right.
Corporately, that like, all right, we're going to walk alongside of you.
Yeah.
That's right.
So it does work both ways.
Yeah.
It's not just presenting the child or you're being baptized.
Correct.
It's one of the reasons why in our tradition, we encourage to do it within the community.
Yes.
Baptism happens within the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
COVID has changed a lot of that.
Sure.
Community has become, I've had to figure out on the fly whether we do a private family baptism where I try to find someone, will you come and sit in the back and be
Represent Chapelwood.
the community.
Right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
And if I can, I said, I'm going to represent the church now in this place and space.
Yeah. That's super interesting to me about baptism. Like one time at Mercy Street, there's a folks that we had baptized a woman that was in a halfway house, and then she was remanded to long-term prison care, and she had a child. Mm. We had baptized them a few weeks before. There's a members of Chapelwood and who came to Mercy Street that said, came to my office and said, "Didn't we just baptize that woman?" And I said, "Yeah." And we kind of talked about that. When we said these vows, didn't we say we were going to do this? And I was like, yeah, this is all like academic to me. That just was like, is this another ritual? They said, then doesn't that kid belong to us? Mm. And he's about to get put into the foster care. And I said, yeah. They said, we've been we wake up at night thinking about him. They went and took all the courses they needed to do, and they fostered to adopt this kid. And he was raised in our community as a kid that was, I think, 6 or 7 at the time, maybe even earlier, and all the way through high school graduation and beyond. Those folks are still in our community, right?
It's incredible.
Those folks taught me about baptism. My denomination did not. My classes in seminary did not. I had no idea about what it meant to be claimed by baptism until those folks showed up and said, that kid's ours. We said these words, right? That's the difference, I think, that we're attempting to understand in the gospel of Christ.
And that goes back to wisdom is not knowing.
Yeah.
Wisdom is practicing.
Yeah. Come on.
It's so good.
That's
Come
awesome.
I love that story.
I do too. It changed me. I think
he's got great stories.
It's
well,
amazing.
Michael's got great
it's
stories.
Amazing.
I love you guys.
How about your family? How's your family doing? Tell us about your family.
Everybody's good. So I'm married to Mariah. I'm doing
way above yourself.
Oh, I'm doing the trophy husband thing for sure. She's brilliant. She's an occupational therapist, and she's doing a fellowship right now at Tier Memorial Hermann, becoming like a neuro specialist. So she works with people that like she was treating somebody the other day that had got shot in the head the day before. And she's doing therapy with this guy and gonna like give him, you talk about resurrection or redemption, literally giving people their lives back. So she's brilliant and amazing and fun and wonderful. No kids, but we have a dog named Crouton, named after the delicious salad accessory. And she's the joy of my life.
Your dog Crouton.
Yeah, she was small and brown when we got her.
And delicious.
And I don't know, but yeah, she's great. She's part pit. She's a little bigger than a Crouton. She grew.
I don't know. I've some Caesar salads and the croutons are really big.
Yeah, this is. We should name her Loaf or something. So she's great. So yeah, but family's good. Mariah being healthcare, COVID has been crazy. But she's resilient and doing great things.
That's great. Well, man, thanks for coming and being with us today.
It's so fun.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thank you guys.
We wish we had some wisdom to share with you, but Do you want to share any more wisdom?
No,
Do you have
out.
any?
I'm out.
Yeah.
Actually, this may get edited out. I would love for Michael to talk like what we talked about aphasia. I think that's a great little kind of nugget. But we may not use it. But would you talk about like?
No. All right. Well, we're not ending. We're going to talk about aphasia. Is that where you see colors and shapes?
No. That's an LSD trip.
Yeah,
that's an LSD trip. Well, aphasia.
That's after this. Yeah. So.
Aphasia is like not being able to either think of a word, but you can't say it, or to see an object that you don't know what it is. And so it usually has to do with a neurological disorder. My mom had it when she had brain cancer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I thought your insight into that in terms of the language that we're speaking, in terms of our cultural divides, was super helpful to me today. So
okay. And this is all Mariah, because she's the brilliant neuro specialist. So like she'll work with patients that have aphasia, and there's two different kinds. There's expressive aphasia, and then another one that I don't remember, but two kinds. And the idea is like, one of them is I see this cup right here in front of me, but I can't find the word for cup in my like brain. So I might call it couch or John or keys or something like that, because I can't locate the word anymore. I know what the object is, but I can't find the word within me.
You know the function of it,
use
but
it,
you
all
just
of
can't
this.
find the
The
word
word
for it.
isn't accessible. The other kind of aphasia is, John, you would say cup, and I have no idea what you were talking about. I can't locate the real object from the words that you're saying. And so I think for church, like we're talking about the shifts right now, I think there's like theological aphasia happening where people, either from church leaders, are hearing words that are, pastors are really good at speaking Christianese, churchy language that doesn't relate to real world experiences. And so they're hearing these words and unable to locate anything real that's coming out of like what's coming from the pulpit or church expressions. Or the reverse is there's experiencing the divine in very real ways outside of the church.
Yes.
But because of lack of discipleship or really closed off understandings, they can't pull words out to name that stuff as divine or as cut from within them because their lexicon is so small. Yeah. And so I think, we're losing folks because of language stuff. I mean, you were talking about Wittgenstein earlier, and so not being able to locate, I think we're doing a poor job of helping people connect God talk to like real lived experiences, or help people exegete their own lived experiences and see the divine working.
That's right.
Wow.
Which sounds like reverence stuff.
Well, it was funny. It made me think, because last week I used reverence a lot. I thought I did a good job explaining what reverence was.
I follow you on Facebook, I know all about reverence.
I saw I ran into a mom of a teenager, and they were in church, and she was listening, and she kept asking her mom, "What's reverence? What's reverence?" And I realized it was like, man, I didn't do a good job connecting at a 15-year-old level. Is reverence.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about aphasia,
Aphasia.
All I could think about was the Ted Lasso episode.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh yeah,
it's on my list.
Come on.
He talks about, they call it semantic satiation, where it's like you say a word over and over again, like grace, grace, and I'll say, wait a minute, it's grace, and then it loses its meaning. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yes.
Like grace. If you say it enough, it's just, I don't know what it means.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
I lost it. And I'm thinking we've used some words in the church that just like, I don't even know what they mean anymore.
Right. And some words, this is what I picked up from you, are wounded words, right? Words that we shouldn't use anymore because we need because they come with such baggage from people, especially people that have experienced spiritual or religious trauma. Like, it's something they don't mean anything. They mean bad things now. And so how do you reclaim that idea, that movement, without using those? I mean, evangelism is a beautiful word, but for so many people, like, it comes with really problematic.
You can't use it. You can't use an evangelical,
right?
Which is interesting because as denominations split, one side wants to label themselves as evangelical, realizing that like the whole culture views this thing like, in people that are not churched look at that term.
It's a dirty word.
Not a
That's right.
way.
And even I think sometimes, and this is maybe beyond the pale, but in some ways, even the name of Jesus, the way that it has been culturally configured and constructed, has become a barrier to the very presence and person of Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. And so sometimes the church, and we talked about this before, John, that often the church is answering questions that no one is asking.
Yes.
And so we create this whole system of language, and we say this is the important stuff, but where people live, move, and have their being. It's so disconnected. How does this have anything to do with my 3 o'clock self that gets woken up and says, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
Or where does this anxiety get met? And what, and the church is out here pumping up these words that is absolutely disconnected. And so you have folks that show up in church in utter desperation, and we've got nothing to offer them because we've invested in the wrong words and meanings, right? And we've created aphasia. It's almost like a cultural creation of that.
We are the brain injury.
We are the church as brain
we're
injury.
the trauma. Yeah.
All I'm thinking about is a lot of churches that I know, I won't name names, and they probably don't listen to this podcast, but we're like in pandemic, coming out of pandemic, and their sermon series has been love, sex, and marriage.
Yeah.
Or faith in the movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
because this is what people need right now,
Yeah.
that's
right?
exactly what I need
Yes.
right now
Yeah.
is faith in the movies,
Yes.
which is total distraction, which I guess is what a lot of people want.
Yeah.
And
I
what
mean,
religion becomes.
when you're under such trauma, what's best thing in the world? Just ignore it, pretend like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Drugs.
Well, that's what it is.
Sorry.
But no, it
right.
is.
No, I'm with
It's
you.
a drug.
It's an epidural,
Yeah, honestly.
right?
What do they call that stuff? Drugs and alcohol, and
Yeah. Good stuff.
just it covering up the symptoms.
Yeah. Anxiety management system.
There you go.
Yeah.
Churches are anxiety management systems.
I think often. Yeah. And numbness to reality often.
Yeah, I'm concerned that, we're talking about like right now, it's like, what do we remember? If we look back and see, we thought we were going to be out of COVID, but apparently we're still in it. Look back and remember, what did we learn? But what lessons should we have learned that we didn't learn?
Yeah.
We missed.
Yeah.
Or what lessons are we too willing to like leave behind that
Yeah.
we need to take with us?
really good.
And so when you debrief from the pandemic, which we're still in, it's like, what's something from the pandemic you don't want to give up? Some new practice or thought or way of viewing the world. You don't want to give that up. And then what's the parts you just want to give up? You get away from. There's that stuff too, but
It's good.
That's a lot.
hey,
Yeah.
you did a
Do we
good
need to
job
do-
today. So
Yeah,
we
I think we're
are
just
going to
gonna go
let
ahead
you.
and
We're
give
not
it.
even going to.
Wow.
We're not
Thank
even
you.
going to wait
No.
to see what the the cycle and the social
But
media
don't
is.
open it until we do, because we may ask you to
I'll send it back. Yeah. I'll pay for postage. It'll be fine. So, no, this is great. Thank you guys so much.
Congratulations!
Thanks,
You know how to use that?
Yeah. I'm a coffee guy.
Good. All right.
You just eat them, right?
Yeah, just candy on the way back to Galveston.
Yeah, to suck on a
pop them
hand
in.
of them. Just really delicious.
Michael, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, John,
for
thanks
spending
so
some
much.
time.
Yeah.
Come see us again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or we should do an episode in Galveston.
Dude.
Yeah, I would have so much fun.
Dude.
Yeah, we
Can we do
could.
that
We
with
could
some
go
of
to
your
Central
folks?
and
Yeah, I would
with
have so
some of your
much fun.
people.
They would
Let's
love
do
it.
that.
Oh yeah. Oh, that sounds like Kool-Aid. Oh yeah. Well, I'm John Stevens,
And I'm Matt Russell.
And I'm Michael Gienger.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.